A basic tutorial about how to use, we're going to do the rounded rectangle tool, some layer styles, and how to make a basic mask in Photoshop to create a button. I'm going to start out with a new file. I'll just make it 500 by 500. I'm going to put it to full screen with F. And then start with the first layer. I'm going to name it background. BG. Select this should be the default, the rectangle tool. If you hit U, it'll take you to it. And then if you hold left click here, select the rounded rectangle tool. And then just drag out however big you want to make it. I'll make it 200 by 61. Now, the first thing I do when I'm doing this button, I'm just going to rasterize the layer. If you right click over here, you hit rasterize layer, that just flattens it, turns it from a shape into an image. I'm going to make the background of the actual document. I'm going to add another layer. G takes you to the I think the default is the paint bucket tool, but if it's on the gradient tool, you can just switch it. If you hit Shift G, it automatically switches it for you. So select the paint bucket tool. I'm just going to put the background to black. And then go back to your button background layer. If you double click on the right side of the layer, it takes you to the layer style window. And for the button, I'm just going to add a gradient overlay. And then the from in two colors, I'm going to change black to dark gray. About there. And the white, I'm going to change it to light gray. Or a lighter gray. Around there. So that's it. You just hit OK. I'm going to add a stroke. This adds a border around the entire layer, whatever shape that you have on the layer. The stroke, I'm going to make it a size of 1. And the fill type, I'm going to change it from color to gradient. So that adds that little effect to it. And then instead of having it on the right side, to change it from top to bottom, I'm just going to change the angle to 90 degrees. And then change the gradient from so bright of a white down a little bit lighter gray. About there. And then the same thing with instead of having it full black, I'm just going to change it to dark, a little bit darker gray. You know, I'm going to add a shadow to it. I'm going to change the base background color to about there, some type of light gray. And then go back to your button background and then add a drop shadow. And then the drop shadow, just going to change the distance to 3 and the opacity a little bit lighter, about 47. And you hit OK. So now we have all that on one layer, which is the button, main background of the button. One thing to do that is pretty good because it shows the background a little bit is just change the entire opacity of the whole layer. Drop it down a little bit just to about 87 or about 90. And then what we're going to do is just going to add a simple highlight on the top part of the button and then add some text just to see how it looks like for a mock-up. So add another layer on top of the button background layer. I'm going to name it highlight. And then for the highlight layer, I'm going to use the rounded rectangle tool again. I'll zoom in a little bit. We're going to start about here and then just drag another rectangle across the top to about there. Rasterize the layer again and then give it a color overlay of white. So now that we have that, this is how to add a mask. So that what we're going to do is we're going to fade it out a little, and then on the bottom is going to be completely faded. So to add a fade to this, you can do this to any image or to anything that you're on a layer rasterized on. or even our raster has. I'm not sure with that, but here's how to do the layer mask. You hit this button down here, you just add a layer mask. And then now that you have this selected, this means that whatever you put on the screen is gonna mask the actual layer. If you have this selected, then you're back drawing on the button layer, on the highlight layer, sorry. So we're gonna stay on the layer mask layer and then hit G or select the gradient tool. And then up here, make sure that your color is going from white on the left side with an opacity of 0. This top part is the opacity and then the bottom part is the color. And then the right side, I just have the bottom part to black and the top part opacity is 100. Once you have the color selected up here for the gradient, with your gradient tool, make sure you're doing a linear gradient, not a radial. So once you have a linear gradient selected on the masked layer, we're gonna drag it from about here. If you hold shift while you drag it, it'll snap to 45-degree angles. So then just drag it all the way down to about there, maybe higher, about there, and that way we get that fade down the button. So now that we have that in place, we're just going to change the opacity to about 27, somewhere around there, 29, 28, whatever it looks good. And then that's it. You leave it like that. I really like how it looks with that background with light gray. If you put it darker there, you see it a little bit better with what the effect we're trying to make. And then I'm just going to add a text layer over it. And there you have kind of bootleg button. This is basically just like a quick way if you're trying to do a quick mock-up or anything, and instead of creating a button that looks like just a rectangle with some text on it, this at least gives it a little bit of style, and learn how to use to make that mask on the top portion of it. That's it.